Welcome to Just Wanna Quilt, a research podcast coming out of Tulane University Law School, where we explore all kinds of things, stories about quilting, tools, field trips, maybe some famous quilters stop by, and of course a little bit of copyright thrown in just for fun. So today we talked to Laura Flusche. She is the director of the Museum of Design Atlanta. We traveled there to see a special exhibit called Making Change, the Art and Craft of Activism. And it was incredible, moving, fun, interesting, horrifying, wonderful. We talked with her. As part of the exhibit, we also had already interviewed a number of the artists, including Sarah Trail and work from the Social Justice Sewing Academy, Sean Kimber, whose work is amazing and brilliant, and Gina Adams, whose welcome blanket exhibit was there as well. It was awesome. So tell me your name and where we are right now.
So my name is Laura Flusche, and we are at the Museum of Design Atlanta.
Awesome. And we are seeing what's going on here. Why are we here?
A few weeks ago, Moda opened an exhibition that's called Making Change, the Art and Craft of Activism, and it looks at the craftivist movement, the place where traditional crafts like quilting and knitting and ceramics and others meet social justice and human rights activism. So there's a wide variety of work on view.
It's incredible. Is this new? Or, do we see this as, a new thing? Or has there always been this? Do you have any sense of,
I think this has always been a phenomenon, and I think it goes all the way back if we think of things like Penelope weaving in the Odyssey. We see women being empowered through these kinds of crafts, which is not to say that it's exclusively women who participate in this. When we, in a timeline in our exhibition, we trace this movement back to the Revolutionary War here in the United States, the idea of using handcrafts or traditional crafts as a means of protesting or making change in the world. I think there is a particular resurgence in it right now because of the political era that we're in, and people looking for ways to make their voice heard.
Well, it's so interesting because I interviewed the Welcome Home Project, Jana from the Welcome Home Project, and the Pussycat movement is just incredible that it was these two women after the election that were just like, what do we do? Right. And that sea of pink. I made 25 pink hats myself.
Wow.
So
Congratulations.
I was just very unhappy. So every night I would just crochet. I was angry crocheting.
It's like that giant embroidery that Shannon Downey, who goes by Badass Cross Stitch on Internet Made, that's on the Internet Made. And the embroidery says, I made this just so I could stab something 3,000 times.
Really great, right?
Yeah.
So how did this project come about?
About a year ago, a staff member here at Moda came to us and said, I want to teach some subversive cross-stitch classes for the community. And we thought that sounded interesting, and so we said, sure. And we noticed that they sold out, that there were a really wide range of people who came and attended, that they stayed a long time, had a terrific time. And so I started doing some research about the craftivist movement, which I didn't know that much about before. Ran across Betsy Greer, who coined the term craftivism in 2003, and then who wrote a book called Craftivism. Read her book, got really inspired, called her on the phone, and said, would you be interested in curating an exhibition for Moda, because this seems very timely and important, and we'd like to document it. And she said, sure.
How does this? There's another group. What is it called? Protest quilts that have been making the rounds at quilt museums, right? Have you seen that? They're was it New England Quilt Museum? I think it was at QuiltCon. That's totally different than what you put together your own exhibit. That's not that traveling exhibit that's going around. Right? It's
not that traveling exhibition. I have seen that, and there's remarkable work in it. Yeah. But we did pull this together on our own. Yes.
Interesting. Cool. So, what's your favorite? Do you have a favorite? I know what my favorite is, which is I have many favorites now. I can't choose. It's like you're not supposed to choose between your children, right?
Yeah, I have a lot of favorites too. I knew that I would love Bonnie Peterson's work.
Yeah,
which really is a study in how textiles can reflect scientific data, And that's amazing, and they're
and
as beautiful as I thought.
Water-based and environmental, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And she's got one on Flint. Is that
she has a quilt that documents the first 1,000 days of all the events from the first 1,000 days of the Flint, Michigan water crisis.
It's incredible.
Amazing. So I knew I would love those. I think one of the most things that surprised me the most that I've fallen in love with are the doilies of imminent destruction.
How were those? So they're very intricate.
They're extremely intricate. They're laser cut.
They're laser cut.
Yeah, they're laser cuts.
So she did it on as a computer.
I guess so. Mm-hmm. And then use the laser cutter. But they're gorgeous.
They're gorgeous. Mm-hmm. I love the purses. There's purses that have the lights of the different phrases.
Yep. Michelle Pred's purses. I love Catherine Clark's embroidery about the Syrian refugees.
So what are we supposed to take away from this? This is like, how am I supposed to feel? I'm not exactly sure. I mean, I have a lot of emotion. I feel kind of overwhelmed. I'm impressed. I want to make one. I could never make one. I've got a lot of sort of, what do you think we should be getting out of it?
I think there's a lot of things, but I guess what I hope personally is that when we see this kind of work, we understand that there are lots of ways to be activists, and that using your hands might be as important or meaningful for some people as marching in a protest or signing a petition or campaigning for a politician or something like that. All of those things, of course, are necessary. But what I'm struck by is the meditative quality of this work, and that people are choosing to spend weeks or months reflecting on a specific issue that's meaningful or powerful to them in making something with their hands, and that really gives them the opportunity to think deeply about issues. I think often in the world today, instead of thinking deeply, we react to something we hear on the news, and then we go on to the next thing or whatever's next in our lives, and we're affected by it, but we don't take the time to process. And I think that seeing how people are choosing to process these kinds of issues is really meaningful.
Well, I remember when I interviewed Sean Kimber, and it was incredible. She said that when she does the Black Lives Matter quilts, she doesn't have anything on. It's just like quiet, and it's just like she just keeps thinking about it. And I kept saying, like, when I see your quilts, it's like I can feel the sorrow. Like, it isn't just the, you know what I mean? Like, it's like it's coming out of the quilt.
Right.
And she's like, well, that's and I really do. And it just feels like there's more to it with the handcraft than just making it. That somehow part of your soul or your body or your anger or your love goes into it. Do you feel like that when you see these things? Like, it feels like it's not just...
Yeah, I think so, because you're giving a significant portion of your life to this. A quantifiable amount, not the amount it took to slam your fist on the table and say, I wish this wasn't happening in our country. You're really doing something, and it's physical and it's mental at the same time. So it's engaging whoever the maker completely. And I think that things that engage us completely, both physically and mentally at the same time, are the most meaningful things we do in the world.
I mean, art is great, like regular straight painting or whatever, but something about the quilt process and the craft process, kind of that 3D and that touching, and that it really, it just is, I don't know, it just gets me. I love it. I love this stuff.
Another thing that we hope at Moda is that this is empowering, so that you can see what other people are doing, but that you take advantage of the workshop we've set up in our side gallery and sit down, and even if you are not someone who's a crafter or who has experience doing that, you try it out and you get an idea of what it means to do something like that.
Tell me a little bit about Jessica Lewis and the piece here. Jessica Lewis is the one that was running the workshops. Tell me a little bit about Jessica Lewis, you were the one that sort of started about it. She's a critical part of this sort of beginning of all of this. And I thought that was really cool that it was like one of your staff. You know what I mean? Like, tell me a little bit more about that.
So Jess joined the Moda team about a year ago as a public programming designer. And one of her areas of interest is craftivism. And I think she's the one who came and said, I want to do subversive cross-stitch classes. And we said, sure. And talking with her, watching her do it, talking to people who took her classes when she did that really opened my eyes and presumably the eyes of the rest of the staff as well to this movement and made us think about it.
So interesting. I think about Sarah Trail, and there's another one at the Canadian Immigrant Museum, Andrea, and now Jess. There's all these like certain generation of like really cool, thoughtful people that are using this craft activism and community connection. I can't wait to see what they keep doing, because they're
absolutely.
like, it's really interesting to see that this generation that is just like really doing interesting work.
Yeah,
it's really amazing.
I don't know if you had a chance to talk to Jess about this, but she did a camp for teenagers, a Craftivism camp, right when the show started, and it was a huge success. The kids really loved it.
Right?
Yeah,
it's so great.
Yeah.
Also, tell me a little bit about Gina Adams and the Broken Tree Quilt.
So Gina Adams has set her sights on creating a broken treaty quilt for every state in the United States. And what she does,
that's really interesting.
It's amazing. I think
I didn't even know it was that big a project.
It's a big
project. That's really
the last I read, though, that this could be out of date, is that she'd done 26. So she goes and she finds antique quilts, and then she applies to them.
So she's not making the quilts.
She's not making the quilts. She's finding the quilts. And she tries to find quilts.
interesting.
So what she's doing is she's documenting on these quilts treaties that the United States made with Native American tribes and then broke.
That's so amazing.
So she tries to, my understanding is she tries to find quilts that even are from the era when the treaty was made.
This is the, what's it called? It's pink. It's a cute little old-fashioned quilt.
Yeah.
With the treaty letters on it.
Right. So she cuts the letters out of calico because it was the first commodity produced in the United States and exported to Europe. And she applies the letters of the treaty to the quilt.
So what's cool about it, and I'll post a picture of it, it's so cool. So what it is on the back side of it, you can kind of see the treaty, right? It's like the treaty begins. And then on the calico side, it's harder and harder to read it. Like you can't, and it looks like it's broken because you can only.
That's true.
Like, it's really cool. So like the broken treaty, like it begins like whereas it looks like the treaty language. Oh, it's brilliant. It's just like, it's really good.
She's amazing, and the internet suggests she's getting a lot of artist residencies and having a lot of shows right now. That's great,
right?
Yeah,
it's really great. Badass Her Story. Tell me a little bit about. Is it Shannon? Downey, yeah.
So Shannon lives in Chicago, and she goes by the internet moniker Badass Cross Stitch. And she hit an interesting peak of fame last year when she made a embroidery that said "Boys will be boys," but she crossed out the last boys and put "held accountable for their fucking actions" below that. And it went viral, and Vogue published it. It was everywhere.
It was everywhere. That's really great.
Which is great. And then now she's started a project by which she's it's called Badass Her Story, her new project. She's crowdsourcing 12 by 12 inch embroideries from women and female identifying people. Mm-hmm. And she is asking them to stitch their story on this 12 by 12 inch piece of fabric. And then she's going to collect them all and create a huge installation. I'm not sure she knows exactly where she's going to install it.
And you all have that here, so you can make one here, right?
So coincidentally, we rolled it out here on exactly the same day she rolled out the project worldwide. And so we are giving people 12 by 12 inch pieces of fabric and inviting them to sit down in our galleries and stitch their stories and then hang them on our walls.
It's so insane. And then the welcome blankets. So did we talk about that yet? So no. Gina, okay, so I interviewed her too, which I was like I was way fangirly with that interview and because I just said I had already. So tell us a little bit about the welcome blanket.
So Jada, of course, is the one of the two people who designed the pink pussy hat.
Which is insane. Right? I told her she could do nothing more in her life, and she's accomplished more than anyone. Like the idea of millions of people wearing hats around the world because of those two. Pink.
Right.
Crocheted and knitted and made hats.
Yeah, but it seems to have energized her.
Incredible.
So she has a new project called Welcome Blanket, and she's asking people across the nation to crochet, knit, sew, quilt 40 by 40 inch blankets, and then to put them in a package with a note of welcome for a refugee or an immigrant to the country. and send them here to Moda. And we are cataloging them, photographing them, putting them up on our walls, and then redistributing them as we accumulate them to agencies that are helping immigrants find their way in the country.
So with all of the controversy right now, yesterday there were people everywhere protesting the treatment of the children, the lost children. How has that impacted the exhibit, and does it change it here? Have you seen, like, it seems like it's more, like, it's making it much more relevant, I would imagine, and also horrifying. I mean, like,
I think it's
more
become more vivid in our minds.
Yeah.
What's happening and what it is to be an immigrant or a refugee to the United States. We're seeing that on TV much more than we ever have. So I do think it makes things more relevant. And I hope that it inspires people to participate in Jana's project, which she talks about as giving a warm welcome to refugees and immigrants, so that even more people will make those blankets and send those notes of welcome, and we can make people feel at home.
Yeah, it's so funny because when I interviewed her, I told her that I've been wanting to make one, but I kept getting really insecure. I easily get insecure. Like, it wasn't going to be good enough, right? Like, I'm an okay quilter. But then I see it here. The work is beautiful, but it's at all levels. So you don't have to be, like, super amazing. Like, and it's simple. Yeah. Sometimes it's very simple work. Other times it's super complicated.
Right.
But it doesn't, it's like, so anyone listening out there wanting to, don't be shy. And also she said it doesn't have to be 40 and 40 to the quilters, because the quilters kind of freaking out about that, because we're not like 40 by 40 people.
Right.
She doesn't care, so you can send like whatever. She doesn't want gargantuan ones because those are a bit harder. But but yeah. So, and
I think on the Welcome Blanket website, she offers some patterns and ideas that are jumping off points as well. So if you need some inspiration, you can check that out.
Totally. Okay. The last no, I have two more. All right. So there's one in this show that I can't remember her name, but we'll get it later. It was called Dresden, and it's an old quilt that's been dyed like deep black, and then it's got skeletons on it. So tell me a little bit about that one.
So that's a piece that has layers and layers of meaning, which is really interesting. So my understanding is that Maggie was given a quilt by a friend's grandmother, and it was an antique quilt, and she did take it and dye it black, and it was made in the Dresden pattern. So I'm sure your listeners know more about the Dresden pattern than I do, but she was inspired by that. And she decided that while the Dresden pattern makes reference to the elaborate china and porcelain that came out of the city of Dresden, she wanted to put another layer on top of it that makes reference to what happened in Dresden in World War II, which was a huge amount of bombing.
Okay, last one. Natalie, is it
Baxter. Natalie Baxter.
I can't read my writing. Natalie Baxter bloated the bloated flags and the guns. Two different ones. So tell us about that. That's what, like, as you walk in, you see these like stuffed animal guns, like they're like kind of guns, and then the purses that have like are light up, and then the black light that Sean Kimber's piece. Like, it's just this incredible, like, as you walk in. So tell me about first the guns and then the other flag one.
So Natalie's a textile artist in New York, and she was, according to her, she was listening to NPR about the gun debate in the United States and the mass shootings that we keep happening, and found herself making stuffed guns out of brightly colored fabric with lots of fringe. They're fanciful and whimsical. And one of the questions that she's asking with them, because they're ridiculous looking, they're hilarious and ridiculous and cute, is if we take away visually the power that guns have in their metallic appearance, do we change the way people think about them and use them? Yeah.
Very cool. And then she had bloated flags.
Yeah, so she started making stuffed flags, American flags, U.S. flags, not in red, white, and blue, but in colors like pink and gold with lots of fringe. And they also look mildly ridiculous. We have a very large one. We have 3 smaller ones, but we have a very large one that's called America Current State. I hope that's right. that is knotted. So it's a big pink and gold flag with a lot of gold fringe on it that's knotted at the center, making reference to our political issues right now.
That's very cool. Well, this is so amazing. So Sid, my kid, has joined us, and she's just been through the exhibit. You have any thoughts about it? What are your thoughts as you...
I think it's really cool. And
talk a little bit louder.
I think that it's really interesting. I think it's amazing to see what all the different people have done for these different causes. And art is always the thing that is always what rebellions rely on, what revolutions rely on. Art is the core of it. It's expression. It's all we have when there's political climate like now in America and in other countries around. Talking about the flags, especially, I was standing with one of the people who do the tours and with my friend Sky, and we were talking, the three of us were talking about all the different ways to interpret it, that the idea that it looks almost like intestines, and which is so interesting because the American flag has almost been gutted of the meaning of its meaning. That was Sky's observation. The woman who was walking us through talked about how there was a 12-year-old boy on one of her tours that talked about how the different areas could represent different social classes, and like it was just a really cool conversation. There's so much just powerful art in this exhibit, and it's really awesome.
Any particular piece that struck you?
I really like I don't know if I got the name right, but the doilies of destruction one, where they took like watercolor paper and made them look like doilies of different places before they got destroyed by man-made objects of destruction. And then the other one I really liked was, it was no idea what it was Persons of Interest or something. What is it? The Unusual Suspect? What is it?
Everyday Suspects.
Everyday Suspects, where they cross-stitched, embroidered, scenes of like normal people living normal everyday lives, but it's either through the like vision of like a drone watching them, or through like a gun, with the crosshairs, and it's kind of just horrifying but really cool.
Right, really average, ordinary scenes.
Yeah, like two people sitting on a couch, or a woman, I think she was like washing dishes, or
I think there's someone sitting on a toilet.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, we came to Atlanta and on this big adventure, which has been exhausting to come here because we had to see it in person.
Cool.
And it was more than don't you think it was even more than, it's just even better than we could ever imagine.
That's terrific. Well, thank you.
It was just like, I feel like it's what it should all be. I mean, it can't all be about it, but this for me is like, it's like what it's really all about, is art, having a voice and using your incredible creativity, as Sid said, to sort of be expressive of what's going on and have a voice out there. So anyway, any last thoughts before we end?
It's up until September 9th.
Awesome.
So come have a look and let us know when you're here.
Awesome. Well, thanks again.
Thank you.
So this is Elizabeth Townsend Guard. You've been listening to Just Wanna Quilt, a research podcast coming out of Tulane University Law School. We want to hear from you. Join our army, our quilting army. Go to our Facebook page. Suggest people to be interviewed. Suggest yourself to be interviewed. We are excited to hear from you. But most importantly, I hope you get a chance to quilt today.